How dare you just show up here after all these years? I demanded, blocking the doorway as I glared at my ex-husband Dean standing on my porch. I hadn't seen or heard from him in over a decade, not since the divorce 12 years ago. Marianne, please, just hear me out, Dean pleaded, his voice calm despite my obvious anger. I made mistakes, I know, but I've changed now. I just want a chance to reconnect with you and with our daughter Eliza. I scoffed, crossing my arms defensively. A chance? You had your chance, Dean. You abandoned us, abandoned your own child. Eliza doesn't even know you. As far as she's concerned, she has no father. Dean looked pained, his shoulders sagging. I regret that. I do. Leaving you both was the worst decision of my life. But I've gotten my act together now. I have a good job, a nice place to live. I can offer Eliza opportunities. All I'm asking is that you let me get to know her. I studied Dean closely, conflicted emotions swirling within me. He seemed sincere, his green eyes hopeful behind his stylish glasses. And despite myself, a small part of me still cared for him. We had been childhood sweethearts once, married at 18 in a whirlwind of young love, back when I thought we'd be together forever, until he shattered that illusion. Please, Marianne, Dean repeated gently. I just want to make things right. I bit my lip, considering having a father might benefit Eliza, filling the painful gap left by Dean's abandonment. But could I trust him again after all the hurt? Before I could respond, Eliza's voice rang out behind me. Mom, who is that? I turned to see my daughter descending the stairs, her brown eyes, Dean's eyes, fixed curiously on the stranger at our door. She looked so innocent, so vulnerable. Could I really expose her to a man who might only wound her again? But keeping them apart now seemed impossible. Eliza, I said slowly, this is your father. Eliza's mouth fell open in shock. I watched the play of emotions on her face, confusion, curiosity, even a flash of something that might be yearning. The image of the father she'd always longed for but never known. Dean stepped forward eagerly. It's wonderful to finally meet you, Eliza. You've grown into such a lovely young woman. Eliza shifted awkwardly. Thanks. Nice to meet you too, Dad. The word sounded foreign, yet hopeful on her lips. I tensed, hovering between them like a gatekeeper. Could I really stand by while Dean waltzed back into our lives? But Eliza was clearly intrigued by him, as I once had been by the charming boy who stole my heart at 16. Dean turned to me with an eager smile. Why don't we go out for dinner, the three of us? My treat. It would give us a chance to talk, get to know each other again. Before I could protest, Eliza broke in. That sounds awesome. Can we go, Mom, please? Her pleading eyes decided me. However misguided, she deserved a chance to know her long-lost father. But I swore Dean would never hurt my little girl, not if I had anything to say about it. I sighed, fixing Dean with a warning glare to let him know I'd be watching him. All right, dinner it is. But don't think charming Eliza means I've forgiven you. Dean just grinned, victory glinting in his eyes. Wouldn't dream of it, Marianne. This is just the first step. Somehow I knew then, this was only the beginning. Dean was worming his way back into our lives, and I feared nothing good could come of it. I watched Eliza surreptitiously, a knot forming in my stomach. She sat next to Dean in the bustling restaurant, hanging on his every word. He was charming her, just like he once charmed me, with compliments and stories and promises of a bright future. And Eliza was falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. So you really live in a beach house? She asked, fork poised mid-bite. That's so cool, Dean chuckled. It's just a small place, but yeah, right on the shore. Maybe you can come visit sometime if your mom says it's okay. I bristled. Allow my daughter alone with this virtual stranger? Not likely, but Eliza's eyes were shining. Could I, Mom? It would be so amazing to spend time together. My stomach twisted at her innocent eagerness. Dean didn't deserve her admiration after walking out on us. I opened my mouth to object, but Dean shot me a subtle warning look. Clenching my fist under the table, I forced a tight smile. We'll see, if Dean and I think you're ready later on. Eliza's face fell slightly, but Dean squeezed her hand. It's all right, we still have these visits to look forward to. In fact, why don't you come stay with me this weekend? The knot in my gut tightened. An entire weekend alone under Dean's influence over my dead body. But again, Eliza spoke up first. Really? I'd love that. She grasped Dean's hand, smiling brightly. Thanks, Dad. This means the world to me. I shifted uneasily. Eliza seemed almost infatuated, clearly craving a connection with her long-lost father. Was I being selfish, letting my resentment toward Dean cloud my judgment? With Eliza looking at me pleadingly, I reluctantly agreed to consider overnight visits in the future, my protective instincts clamoring warnings I tried my best to ignore. Over the next few weeks, Eliza started spending more and more time with Dean, often returning home tired but thrilled with stories of dinners out and shopping trips. I wanted to deny her these outings, but her obvious joy made me hold my tongue. Let her enjoy Dean's presence, I told myself, even as my mistrust nagged at me. Then the changes began. Eliza grew quiet, withdrawn, often picking at her food. Dark circles appeared under her once vibrant eyes. When I asked what was wrong, she brushed me off as just tired from staying up late talking with Dean. But my worst fears were confirmed when I caught sight of bruises on her wrist one night, faded but still visible. Rage boiled up inside me and I saw red. Had Dean hurt her? Used his charm to take advantage of his own naive daughter? I confronted Eliza, who insisted the bruising was an accident, though she refused to meet my eyes. My hands shook with the urge to strangle Dean, to make him pay for whatever he had done. But I restrained my fury. Dean had won Eliza over with his act. She would just defend him now. No, I needed more proof before I exposed him for the monster I was certain he was. So I bided my time, comforting my increasingly withdrawn daughter as best I could. And I watched Dean like a hawk for the tiniest slip-up to confirm my suspicions. He would not get away with hurting my little girl again. I would see to that, if it was the last thing I ever did. She's severely anemic, the doctor said, his forehead creased with concern as he studied Eliza's chart. Dangerously so. We need to start aggressive iron treatments right away. I squeezed Eliza's limp hand, blinking back tears as she lay pale and weak in the hospital bed. When I'd found her collapsed on the bathroom floor after another weekend with Dean, my heart had stopped. Rushing her here, the doctors discovered her rapid and inexplicable blood loss. Now the doctor met my gaze, his eyes troubled. Anemia this acute often indicates an underlying chronic health condition. We'll need to run more tests to uncover the cause. My breath caught. What if Eliza had some terrible, undisclosed illness? Bile rose in my throat as I thought of Dean knowing something and keeping silent. I knew he was ruthless, but risking Eliza's very life seemed beyond belief. Eliza's eyes fluttered open and she gave me a wan smile. "Hi, Mom. Sorry you have to see me like this." My chest tightened, anger and anguish twisting inside me. "It's not your fault, honey," I soothed, smoothing back her hair. Over her head, I exchanged a knowing look with the doctor before he discreetly exited. Settling into the chair beside Eliza's bed, I steeled myself. "Sweetheart, does Dean know you haven't been feeling well lately?" Based on her worsening health, he must have noticed something amiss. Eliza bit her lip, avoiding my gaze. "Well, yeah. I mentioned the headaches and dizziness a few times." I leaned forward intently. "And what did he say?" Eliza shifted, clearly uncomfortable. "Just not to worry about it, that he didn't want me making a fuss when we had plans." Red flashed before my eyes. He knew she was unwell and still dragged her out for his own amusement. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. What kind of father ignored his child's suffering? Just then, a knock preceded Dean, strolling casually into the room, as if visiting his daughter in the hospital was an everyday occurrence. "Hey, kiddo. Your old man got here as quick as he could. How are you feeling?" I shot to my feet, body trembling. "How does she look, Dean?" "She's severely anemic, and they're running more tests." I stepped close, glaring into his impassive face. "You knew she was sick. She told you her symptoms, and you did nothing." Dean lifted his hands placatingly. "Marianne, let's not overreact. I just thought it was normal teen stuff. Eliza said she was fine to go out." He smiled gently down at our daughter. "Isn't that right, honey?" Eliza bit her lip, glancing anxiously between us. My heart cracked, sensing her inner conflict between the father she suddenly adored and the mother who had always protected her. Taking her hesitance as affirmation, Dean turned to me with an easy grin that I wanted to claw off his smug face. "See, Marianne, you shouldn't jump down my throat. I've always had Eliza's best interests in mind. Now, do we know yet what's causing this little iron issue?" His casual tone ignited my fury. He was using Eliza for his own gain. I was sure of it now. and I would not rest until I uncovered exactly what vile scheme he was playing at. For Eliza's sake, Dean had to go down. No matter what it took, I would make him pay for daring to manipulate and endanger my only child. Daddy's little girl was about to bring his whole world crashing down around him. I swore that much as I silently vowed bloody revenge. The shrill ringing of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled for it, pulse racing. Late-night calls were never good news. "Hello?" I mumbled, already swinging my legs out of bed. "Miss Collins?" said an unfamiliar female voice. "This is Mercy Hospital. Your daughter Eliza was just admitted." The rest of her words faded to a buzz as icy fear gripped my heart. Eliza hospitalized? Oh God, what had Dean done to her? I barely remember the frantic drive, running red lights with sirens blaring behind me. I blew past the nurse's station and found Eliza's room, only to stop short at the sight of her. My vibrant, shining girl lay motionless in the stark hospital bed, her skin so pale it nearly matched the sheets. Dark circles like bruises underscored her closed eyes. Tubes and wires snaked around her, connecting to beeping machines. I rushed to her side, grabbing her limp hand as panicked tears streamed down my face. "Eliza, oh honey, what happened to you?" A gentle voice spoke behind me. "You must be Mary Ann. I'm Dr. Lowe." I turned to see a tall doctor reviewing a chart. Her grave eyes met mine. "Your daughter was brought in exhibiting severe symptoms, fainting, fatigue, heart arrhythmia. We ran tests. And," I rasped through the lump in my throat, "Eliza is suffering from acute iron deficiency anemia. Her hemoglobin levels are dangerously low. We've started her on intravenous treatment, but we need to determine an underlying cause." I squeezed my eyes shut as fury seared through me. I knew the cause. The man who had waltzed into our lives 3 months ago, spinning false charm and hollow promises. This was on Dean's head for poisoning my daughter against me. I was sure of it. A groan from the bed drew my attention. Eliza was stirring, her eyes blinking slowly open and squinting against the harsh fluorescent lights. "Mom?" she mumbled. "Where?" I smoothed her hair back, trying to keep my raging emotions at bay. "Shh, baby, you're in the hospital. You're very sick, but you're going to be okay." At least once Dean paid for this, I vowed silently. Over the next few days, Eliza remained hospitalized, as doctors ran test after test. I barely left her side, except when Dean visited. I would retreat to the hall, watching his false sympathy through the glass as I plotted my revenge. Finally, Dr. Lowe called me into her office, closing the door gently behind us. My heart pounded wildly at her grim expression. Had they uncovered something far more sinister plaguing my daughter's failing health? "Mary Ann, please have a seat," the doctor said. She folded her hands atop her desk. "The test results show Eliza has a genetic blood disorder which inhibits her body's ability to produce hemoglobin. It often remains dormant until adolescence, which would explain why symptoms are manifesting now." I sagged back, relief washing over me mingled with shame. This wasn't Dean's doing after all. My little girl was battling a devastating inherited disease, meaning I was the one who passed this down to her. Overcome, I buried my face in my hands as sobs racked my frame. My poor Eliza. As if her deadbeat father wasn't enough, now her own body betrayed her too? Dimly, I became aware of Dr. Lowe squeezing my shoulder, her voice calmly reassuring me of treatment options, clinical trials, hope. But all I could see was Eliza's wan face, her vibrancy wilting away. And I knew then, no matter what it took, I would move heaven and earth to save my daughter's life. She was all that mattered to me now. Dean, my vengeance, even my pride, I would sacrifice anything for her to thrive once more. Somehow, whatever the cost, I had to make this right. I sagged back in the hard plastic chair outside Eliza's hospital room, exhaustion seeping through every bone. I had barely left her side since learning of her devastating diagnosis 3 days prior, maintaining a constant vigil for my fading girl. Nurses drifted by on quiet rounds, their hushed voices and squeaking shoes the only nighttime sounds. In the solitude, vengeance simmered once more in my gut. Dean should be here sharing this agony over our dying daughter. Instead, he breezed in and out at his leisure, always leaving with some transparent excuse. Other plans, important calls, anything to avoid the grim reality that the child he claimed to care for now withered away before our eyes. My phone buzzed. Speak of the devil, an incoming call from Dean. I declined it, couldn't bear his false platitudes tonight. Sending to voicemail, I started to tuck the phone away when I paused. Maybe it was the desperation born of exhaustion. Maybe just my visceral need to hear the truth in his voice. But some mad impulse made me access the voicemail and set it playing on speaker at low volume. What I heard turned my blood to ice. "Marianne, your unrelenting paranoia is really aggravating." Dean's smooth voice flowed out. "Unrelenting paranoia because I refused to leave Eliza alone with him now?" Red mist clouded my vision. "The girl obviously can't travel or satisfy my associates in her condition. You need to get her functional again if our arrangement is going to work." My mouth fell open and I nearly dropped the phone. Arrangement? What on earth was he talking about? Dread crept down my spine as I continued listening. "I've cleared all my debts. The casino owners are paid in full, but some still want revenge for my past games. They'll be satisfied with one weekend, 48 hours with the girl as collateral." A sinister note entered Dean's tone. "She's quite lovely after all, though the anemia does drain that fetching glow." Revulsion roiled through me, and I clasped a hand over my mouth to trap the scream tearing up my throat. That monster. He had leveraged our daughter to settle his gambling debts? Intended to hand her over to be assaulted and abused? Rage ignited within me, hot as an inferno. I would see Dean suffer 1,000 deaths before I allowed him to lay a finger on my child. This evil could not, would not, prevail. The voicemail ended. For long moments I could only sit trembling, visions of violence flashing behind my eyes. Slowly the protector in me overcame the fury. Strategizing replaced reaction. Dean did not know I had heard this confession. That gave me an advantage. I drew in a long breath, mind racing. Then I stood smoothly and crept to Eliza's room. My sleeping girl was warm in my arms as I gently lifted her. Her head lolled onto my shoulder, breath faint against my neck. "It's all right, baby," I whispered. "I've got you now. We're leaving this place tonight, and I will never let anyone hurt you again. Your daddy made a big mistake." Eliza nuzzled closer, and my heart ached with bittersweet love. By the time anyone noticed we had gone, we would be miles away and swiftly disappearing. But my vengeance would remain, tracking Dean unseen and unheard like a deadly ghost. For threatening my child, that monster had sealed his fate. And once Eliza was safe, I would descend on that fate like an angel of death intent on ruin. Dean would regret the day he dared cross Marianne Collins and her innocent daughter. I smoothed Eliza's hair back, listening to her faint breathing as she lay curled on the sagging motel bed. We had driven through the night to get far away from Dean and everyone connected to him. Now exhaustion pressed on me, but I couldn't rest yet. I had plans to make and vengeance to exact. Picking up my phone with shaking hands, I texted my friend Carla. "Marianne, I need your help. It's about Dean and Eliza. Can you meet?" Barely a minute passed before 3 bouncing dots appeared. "Carla, what's that bastard done now?" "Just say when and where." Relief rushed through me. I quickly gave her the motel name and room number, hands steadying now that backup was coming. My nerves jangled with urgency to put things in motion before Dean discovered our absence. Soon a soft knock preceded Carla slipping quietly inside, her kind eyes immediately going to Eliza. "The poor thing," she murmured before turning to me expectantly. "What's happened?" In a rush, I told her everything: Dean's charming reappearance, Eliza's declining health, and finally the voicemail revealing my ex-husband's nefarious intentions toward our daughter. Carla listened silently, her expression morphing from concern to outrage. "That snake," she seethed once I had finished. "He deserves to rot for threatening sweet Eliza's innocence." She gripped my hands firmly. "What's the plan? How can I help take him down?" I squeezed her hands gratefully, my first true smile in days curving my lips. With Carla on my side, Dean didn't stand a chance. Over the next hours, we schemed relentlessly, fueled by vengeance and black coffee from the corner store. Carla would reach out through the local women's shelter to find others Dean had abused over the years, rallying them to speak against him. Meanwhile, I worked with Eliza's school principal, Mr. Jensen, to cut off Dean's access by getting Eliza temporarily withdrawn for medical leave. It would protect my still fragile girl while buying me time to coordinate with detectives I prayed would take my story seriously. By the time exhaustion finally overtook us, the plan was in motion. Carla departed to begin contacting Dean's former victims. I walked her out, collapsing in her embrace on the sidewalk. "It's going to be okay, Marianne," she soothed. "That monster will get what he deserves, I swear to you. We'll make damn sure of it." I squeezed my eyes shut against a sudden upwelling of tears. However this played out, I could not have asked for a better friend through the darkness. When I returned inside, Eliza was awake and watching me silently from the bed. I perched next to her, gently stroking her hair. "We're going to be okay, sweetheart," I whispered. Her responding smile, though wan, filled me with quiet resolve. Dean had no comprehension yet of the danger coming for him now that he had provoked a mother's fury. But he would learn that mistake soon enough. For Eliza, no risk was too great, and no limits would restrain me. My vengeance would blaze a path of ruin through Dean's life, and I would watch it burn with righteous fire in my eyes. He had no idea of the hell coming for him now, but he would. Oh, he would. I strode into the crowded community center, adrenaline firing through my veins. The empty seat at the front beside Carla mockingly awaited its guest of honor, the man I intended to crucify today. I gazed out at the audience gathered at my request, faces Dean had wronged throughout the years mingling with the curious and concerned. Reporters hovered near the back, alerted to a major announcement regarding a prominent local businessman. It was time to take Dean's glossy public image and rip it to shreds, exposing the monster that lurked beneath a charming facade. As the appointed hour hit, Carla stood and took the mic. "I want to thank you all for coming today." Her steady voice belied her nerves for what came next. "By now you're aware this gathering concerns allegations against Mr. Dean Collins. I have here documentation and signed affidavits from victims alleging fraud, abuse, and worse perpetrated by this man." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as she continued detailing Dean's suspected crimes. A tide of vindication rose in me, imagining Dean's growing panic when he realized his sins were coming to light. Right on cue, the doors banged open to reveal Dean striding down the center aisle, polished veneer firmly in place, though his smile appeared strained. "Marianne, what insanity is this?" He grasped my shoulders, but I shook him off with disgust. "You disappeared with Eliza without warning, and now these outrageous accusations." His voice lowered. "Think of our daughter and call this circus off immediately." Red mist descended over my vision. "How dare you invoke Eliza after threatening her innocence to settle your debts?" I snarled. Dean paled. What are you talking about?" He scanned the hostile crowd, smile slipping. "Marianne, please, let's speak privately. This is all a misunderstanding." "There's nothing to misunderstand." My voice resonated with icy authority. "You used Eliza as a pawn by leveraging access to her for your gambling associates. I have a voicemail proving your vile intentions." With a flick of my phone, his slippery voice echoed from the speakers, baldly discussing Eliza as though negotiating a business transaction. Howls erupted from the audience along with cries for arrest and retribution. Dean physically recoiled as all pretense of innocence fell away, revealing naked panic. That recording is fabricated. I would never harm Eliza. She's my blood." He backed away slowly. The predator turned prey. "Marianne, this is insane." Strong hands landed on his shoulders, making him cry out. "That's enough, sir," said a stern-eyed detective I had contacted weeks prior. "You'll need to come down to answer some serious questions about these allegations." As Dean was escorted forcibly from the hall, all sound faded for me. Watching his handsome mask strip away felt almost anticlimactic after so long fearing his shadow. But relief slowly spread through me, easing months of anguish. It was over at last. Dean's web of lies had trapped him instead of us. "Mom?" A small voice at my elbow drew my gaze. Eliza stood beside me, still slightly pale, but with light returning to her eyes. Without a word, I wrapped her in my arms, tears slipping down both our cheeks. My daughter was safe, the villain exposed. Whatever came next for Dean, justice had been served. With Eliza in my arms, I had everything that mattered. The rest was just aftermath. As the crowd's fury turned to cheerful chatter planning Dean's demise, I smoothed Eliza's hair gently. "Let's go home, baby." Her answering smile filled my heart to brimming. The nightmare was over at last. I watched Eliza closely during her doctor's appointment, wary of any lingering strain after the ordeal with Dean. But my girl was strong, her wit quick and charm shining bright as ever, now that the oppressive weight of Dean's schemes had been lifted. Dr. Lowe reviewed the latest blood work and gave us a reassuring smile. Eliza's hemoglobin levels and overall health have improved remarkably this past month. You responded well to the new treatment plan. Eliza beamed, bouncing excitedly on the exam table's edge. Does this mean I can go back to school soon? Laughing, Dr. Lowe patted her knee. I don't see why not. Your mom and I will discuss specifics, but you seem well enough to ease back into normal activities. As Eliza celebrated under her breath with a fist pump, I felt tears sting my eyes. My little girl really was coming back to me, Dean's poison finally leaching out. When we got home, I had another surprise waiting. Grandma! Eliza cried joyfully, rushing into her grandmother's open arms. Janice smothered Eliza in kisses before pulling back, misty-eyed. Let me look at you, my girl. Seems that nasty man didn't ruin all your shine after all. I squeezed Janice's shoulder, overcome with gratitude that she had dropped everything to support us these past harrowing months. Together we had weathered the storm, with help from dear friends and a bit of justice now served. Over celebratory milkshakes, I caught Janice and Eliza up on recent events, including Dean's financial ruin and multiple criminal charges. They confiscated everything to cover debts and compensation for victims, I shared, not without some smugness. He'll be doing good to avoid serious jail time. Janice gave a satisfied nod before cocking her head. Speaking of justice, there's more you should know. She flicked open a newspaper bearing Dean's scowling mugshot. It seems Panthers got Dean's scent. I read the damning headline with widening eyes. Disgraced businessman attacked by circus animals. My hand flew to my mouth at the bizarre details. Apparently, during transport to his fraud arraignment, a semi carrying exotic animals from a shuttered circus had overturned on the highway. Chaos unfolded as lions, tigers, and other freed beasts converged on responding patrol vehicles, including the caravan transporting Dean. He tried fleeing on foot, but was quickly tapped and mauled by 3 escaped panthers in a field until emergency tranquilizations arrived too late. Graphic photos showed his bloody, ravaged remains being bagged at the grisly scene, steel-gray eyes frozen wide in terror. Slowly I lowered the paper, pulse racing. Around me, the kitchen sounds faded as I stared sightlessly. Cosmic justice had intersected human vengeance, dealing a fatal blow I never could have orchestrated alone, no matter how vindictive my rage. In the end, Dean had succumbed to powers beyond either of our control. I became aware of Eliza squeezing my hand, love and relief shining in her face as she too absorbed the news. Janice wrapped an arm around my shoulders, solidarity passing unspoken between the 2 lionesses who helped raise this remarkable young woman before us. Finally, I squeezed Eliza tight, revelation settling through my soul. The dark storm had passed at last. Our future stood bright with hope, and nothing, not health woes, human monsters, or even wild beasts, could defeat the fierce love we shared as an unbreakable family. Dean was gone for good, and we had not just endured, but triumphed thanks to bonds that crossed space and time. No matter what happened next, we had already won. I smiled softly, watching Eliza chatter with her friends across the garden. We were gathered at Carla's house for a long overdue celebration after everything that had happened. School was back in session, and Eliza had rejoined cheerleading practice, her energy and motivation fully renewed now that Dean's shadow no longer darkened our door. She's blossoming before our eyes. Carla appeared beside me, handing over a brimming glass of lemonade. You both are. I nodded, a bittersweet lump forming in my throat. I can hardly believe it's only been 3 months since everything changed. Since Dean had unexpectedly shown up in our lives again. His intentions may have been malicious rather than paternal, but the aftermath of his brief return had fundamentally reshaped our family. Carla gently bumped my shoulder. Hey, look at me. It's over now, Marianne. Eliza is healthy and thriving, and that monster got what he deserved. I know. I blinked back sudden tears, emotions welling unexpectedly. I'm just so proud of how my girl handled everything. She's the strongest person I know. As if sensing our gazes, Eliza glanced over. The smile she gave me illuminated from within, open, honest, unafraid. My breath caught at this glowing vision of the woman she was becoming. No darkness could extinguish her spirit now. Later, after farewell hugs and promises to meet again soon, I drove us home as pale violet dusk settled over the neighborhood. Eliza leaned against me on the couch as we watched the sky fade to black through the front windows. Mom, she finally murmured into the quiet. Do you think Dad would have hurt me in the end? I wrapped an arm around her, choosing my words carefully. I think desperate people can do terrible things when they lack a moral compass to guide them. Your father lost sight of what matters most in life, things like family and integrity. Eliza considered this quietly. I'm sad I never got the dad I imagined, she admitted after a moment, but also kind of glad I don't have to see him be so awful as he got older. Her wisdom and empathy moved me. I kissed her hair, awash with bittersweet relief. Me too, baby. We had gained hard-won perspective from Dean's schemes, yet lost any fantasies that a father-daughter relationship was still possible. It hurt, but the truth often did, in the process of setting you free. Together we watched the faint stars emerge, ordinary miracles persisting despite humanity's flaws. No matter what burdens weighed me down, gazing at the night sky never failed spark perspective and rekindle hope. Look, Eliza suddenly gasped, pointing skyward. I followed her finger to see a brilliant streak of light blaze across the dark canopy. A meteor vanished as swiftly as it had appeared. Make a wish, I whispered playfully, squeezing Eliza close. She shut her eyes, brow furrowed adorably. In that quiet, suspended moment with my daughter tucked under my wing, I sent up my own wish. For her health, for her happiness, for a life full of light chasing away the shadows. A life where wounds healed into wisdom over time. I blinked open, moist eyes to find Eliza watching me, love shining through her smile. What did you wish for? I asked. She hugged me tight. That we'll always have each other. That's all I really need. Overwhelmed, I held my girl close as she anchored me firmly to what mattered most. The past was gone, the future unknown, but right now we had each other. And in that singular truth, I discovered all the hope and healing I would ever need nestled safe in my arms.